All right. So if you're watching this video right now, then you're probably someone who wants to quit smoking weed, or you're someone who has tried to quit smoking weed, but what happens? You end up quitting for about a week, 2 weeks, maybe even 3 days, and then what happens? You end up going back to the blunts, you end up going back to the bong, you end up drinking your bong water because of how addicted you are to this substance, and you're starting to realize that it is literally rotting your brain from the inside, because that is essentially what is happening. It is rotting your brain from the inside. It's literally cooking your brain chemistry. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to explain on this whiteboard. And the reason why I have this whiteboard is because I think it makes me look cool. I don't really need it. Actually, no, I do need it for this explanation that I'm going to explain today. But as I was saying, if you are that type of person who is trying to quit and you have been trying to quit for a long time, trust me, I get it. It literally took me 5 years to quit smoking weed. I knew that I wanted to quit smoking weed when I was at the age of 17. I had a mushroom trip that basically told me, and if you don't know what mushrooms are, I'm talking about psilocybin mushrooms, magic mushrooms. I had a mushroom trip that basically told me that weed is screwing up every aspect in my life. This is when I was 17. So 5 years after that, I tried to quit. After that magic mushroom, after that magic mushroom trip, I quit. I quit for about a month, something like that, maybe a month or two. But I ended up revamping my addiction. So it took me 5 years to actually get to the point where I have full control over my usage. And when I say quit, this is very important. Listen now. When I say quit, quit is completely different from control. Let me write that down. Quit is different than control. Quit does not equal control, and don't mind my writing because I know my handwriting is not the best. It's been a minute since I've actually written something down. But quit does not equal control. Quitting weed is fully abstaining from weed. The reason why I'm using quit is because it's just an easier term that people understand. Quitting is completely different from having control over your addiction, having control over your usage. Quitting is assuming that you are never going to use that substance again for the rest of your life. That's what quitting kind of like assumes. That's what quitting basically that's what quitting assumes, is that quitting, you're never going to use this substance for the rest of your life. Having full control over your usage is different. And this is where I've gotten to the point where I have full control over my usage. I do not get cravings. I do not feel the urge to smoke weed at all. I can go the rest of my life without smoking weed, without even wanting to smoke weed. Now, when I say I have control over my usage, I 100% mean this, because I will still smoke. I will still smoke, but I will only smoke about 2 times a year, 3 times a year at max. Only maybe when I'm on vacation for, I don't know, if it's like a super special occasion, or if I'm on vacation where weed's legal somewhere, then yeah, I'll take like one or two tumps. That's what we call it in Toronto. We call it tumps. I'll take one or two puffs or one or two tumps of the blend, and yeah, like I'll feel cool, but I have no desire to smoke at all. But this is the thing. People who try to quit weed, they try to quit, and then what happens? Literally 100% of people who try to quit weed, or who say they're going to quit weed, they're going to smoke again. They will smoke again whether they like it or not. 100% of people who say that they're going to quit smoking weed do this. You yourself have done this. You know, and you yourself know countless of people, because stoners kind of like only hang out with stoners, like degenerate stoners. So you know a lot of people who said this. You know a lot of people who said that they're going to quit, and then what happens? About a week or two later, they end up taking another puff. Maybe about 6 months later, they end up taking another puff. And then what happens after they take that puff? Boom, a full-blown addiction happens again. A whole-blown addiction ends up getting reawakened. And the reason for that is because they do not have control over their usage. So quitting is one thing. Quitting is actually easy. Abstaining is actually easy, because think about this. If you really want to abstain from weed, then you could literally move to a country where weed's not legal, where it's super hard to find weed. But that's literally the only way you're going to be able to quit. Because if you live in a country, or if everything in your life is kind of conformed to that stoner lifestyle, if all of your friends are stoners, if everything around you is, conformed around weed, if everything around you says stoner, if everything around you is kind of pulling you towards weed, of course you're going to smoke again. Of course you're going to smoke again. So if you want to fully abstain and fully quit, then you would have to cut off all of your friends. You would have to move to another country where weed's not legal. And this is why you rarely ever see people actually quitting weed unless they catch some sort of psychosis attack, like schizophrenia or psychosis or something like that whenever they smoke. Those are the only people who quit because they have a genuine reason why they need to quit, because if they smoke, then they're literally going to go bananas. And I've seen it happen before. It's a real thing. It really does happen. Now, abstaining and quitting, that is actually easy to do because you could go to jail for about, I don't know, a year, and then technically you quit for a year. But what happens when you actually get out of jail? What happens when you're put in the position where you can smoke again? You're gonna run straight back to the fucking weed. You're gonna run straight back to the bong water and start guzzling your bong water. You're gonna start smoking again because you are going to take another puff. It's going to get to the point where you say, yeah, it's fine. It's cool. Like one puff isn't bad, because literally this happens to everyone, and you yourself know that this happens to everyone and this has happened to you. And then once you get a taste of what it feels like to be high again, you're like, yo, this is nice. I'm going to start doing this once a week. And then you start doing it just on the weekends. And then it gets to the point where you start doing it every 2 days. And it gets to the point where you start doing it every day again. So that is literally what happens. And it's happened to me for literally 5 years straight. Now, after that 5 years, it got to the point where I was able to get full control over my usage. So I didn't have to cut off my stoner friends. I actually, till this day, hang out with all of my stoner friends, and they all smoke weed around me, and I could care less. I don't feel the urge to smoke. I don't feel the freaking itch in my neck like, oh man, should I not? No, I just don't feel like doing it. I've shifted my mental framework into one where I feel like I don't need to smoke. Now take that in. Take that in. I shifted my mental framework into someone's mental framework where they feel like they don't even need to smoke. Think about that. Think about that. Because we all know that one person. We all know that one person who, he doesn't really smoke like that. Like we all have that one person back in high school or maybe in college, university in our friend group who doesn't really smoke like that, but they'll smoke every now and then. You know what I'm saying? Like they'll smoke every now and then. They don't really buy weed. They'll just kind of like leech off of other people's blunts. Someone passes them the blunt, they'll be like, yeah, sure. But a lot of the times they'll be like, nah, I don't want to smoke today. I can't smoke today. I have like a test tomorrow, or I have an exam to study for, whatever. We know people who have full control over their usage. We all know this one guy. I've had a lot of friends like that where it made no sense in my head. I literally could not compute in my head how this person could say no to a blunt. It couldn't compute in my head. I was like, yo, what do you mean you don't want to smoke? Like, is there something wrong with you? It couldn't compute in my head how this person could say no and had full control over his usage. Because this person I'm talking about, he only smokes on occasion. He only smokes when it's a special occasion. He only smokes whenever he feels like it, but a lot of the times he doesn't feel like it, and a lot of the times he says no. So we all know this person, so why can't we be like this person? What is the difference between us and this person? Now, who is this person? We will call him Frank. Why can't we be like Frank? There are different things that are pulling us back from being like Frank. There are different things that are stopping us from being like Frank. There are different things that are pulling us towards addiction, whereas Frank, he does not have those things that are pulling him towards addiction. The difference between you and Frank is that you have a subconscious attachment to weed. You have a subconscious emotional attachment to weed, when Frank, on the other hand, doesn't. And the reason why Frank doesn't is because his mental framework is different than yours. Frank's mental framework is one where he feels as if he doesn't need to smoke weed at all, where he feels as if he doesn't need weed to feel fulfilled, where he feels like weed is just something that he does for fun. It's kind of like the same thing as drinking. Like, unless you're an alcoholic, you know that you have complete control over your drinking. Like, some nights you're probably like, yeah, I just don't feel like drinking tonight. Unless you're a complete degenerate, then yeah, you probably don't have control over that. But there are a lot of people who could actually control their alcohol usage. Like every single night that people go out and drink, so some person will be like, yeah, I don't really want to drink that much tonight. I just don't feel like it. Or, I don't want to get drunk tonight. I got stuff to do tomorrow. So it's the same exact thing for weed, for Frank. So you have a mental framework that essentially pulls you towards addiction, pulls you towards weed when Frank doesn't. Now, what are these certain things that are kind of like pulling you towards these weed addictions? It's usually a subconscious distortion. And what do I mean by subconscious distortion? You have a subconscious distortion that makes you think that you need weed. And let me explain this. If you guys don't know what the subconscious is pretty much it's 95% of your mind. It's about 90 to 95% of your mind where it handles everything such as your habits, your deep rooting traumas, your emotions. You guys probably know what the subconscious is. I know I'm not talking to stupid people here, but the subconscious mind is everything that you are not conscious of. That's why it's called the subconscious mind. So some of you might think like, oh man, I don't really have any deep emotional yearning for weed. I don't have any deep sort of like connection to weed, but yes, you do. And that's the reason why you're smoking all the time, because you do have this subconscious distortion that's pulling you towards addiction. Now, something to think about is, why do I even smoke weed in the first place? What is the underlying thing or the underlying reason why I even smoke weed in the first place? And no, don't say it's because you like getting high. If you do say it's because you like getting high, why do you like getting high? Some people would say, oh, it's because it's relaxing, but that is fucking complete and utter bullshit, because weed does not freaking relax you. It makes you think you're relaxed, but no, you're not actually relaxed. All you're doing is pumping dopamine into your brain and pumping serotonin into your brain, because literally what it's doing is it's frying your brain chemistry. It's frying the chemicals in your brain, making you think that you need it when you actually don't, because in reality, all you have is literally cooked brain chemistry, and the weed is the thing that is pumping the chemicals in your brain that makes you think that you need it, because your brain stops producing things like dopamine and serotonin, and you're only getting it from weed. Now you have a reliance towards weed because your brain is not producing those chemicals naturally. So you're getting these chemicals artificially. Anyways, what was I talking about? I completely forgot what I was talking about. Sorry guys, I went on that tangent. What I was saying is that there are certain underlying reasons why you smoke weed. There are certain underlying reasons why you are addicted to weed. One big one for a lot of people is that they're trying to use it as an escape. A lot of people are trying to use weed as an escape. And I see this for a lot of people, and I really see this for a lot of people who don't really like their lives. Their lives aren't that fulfilling. So they use weed at the end of the day to kind of fulfill themselves. They use weed at the end of the day to get that dopamine rush. They use weed at the end of the day as something to look forward to. Maybe you work a 9-to-5 job. Maybe you work a job that you don't like. Maybe you don't even know what you want to do for the rest of your life. Maybe you don't know what career you want to go in. So you're using weed to escape those feelings. Now, by the way, if you want to learn how to quit smoking weed, I have a school community below. I have a community where I teach people how to exactly what I do or what I did to quit smoking weed. And right now I'm letting the first 10 members in for free. So right now it's free for the first 10 members. So if you are a person who actually wants to take quitting weed serious, I literally have a whole program that I bring people through, and I've put hours and hours and hours into this, and it's free for the first 10 members. After this, the price is gonna go up, because there are people literally charging $8,000 to help people quit smoking weed. But no, the program that I have right now, it's free for the first 10 people who join. The reason why it's free is because I'm trying to collect data. I kind of want to make it better. So like what I said, click the link in the description below if you want to learn how to actually quit smoking weed and go through that program. It's free. And I don't know how many people are going to actually join, but the spots are probably going to get taken up. So first 10 members is free. Now, as I was saying, a lot of people use weed as an escape. And the reason why they use it as an escape is because they are not comfortable with dealing with their own emotions. They are uncomfortable with actually feeling things, because what weed does, it brings you in a state of neutrality. And if you kind of use a substance to bring yourself in a state of neutrality. You are not feeling what you are meant to feel. If something bad happens to you, the first thing you are doing is going to weed. If you have something to think about, the first thing you are going to do is smoke a blunt. If you are going through some sort of breakup, you're not going to learn how to actually freaking deal with your issues. You are just going to smoke weed because it numbs the pain. So if you're smoking weed every single day and you're high 24/7, what do you think is going to happen when you stop smoking weed? What do you think is going to happen? All these emotions are going to skyrocket back up, and you were going to feel them in your conscious mind when before they were stuck in your subconscious mind. Thus why it's called a subconscious distortion, because you have so many things stuck in your subconscious mind that want to come up. So when you stop smoking weed, what happens? All of these subconscious emotions that you have not felt or have not processed ends up getting pushed up to your conscious mind. So when they end up getting pushed up to your conscious mind, you start getting overwhelmed, and you're thinking like, fuck, like I can't deal with this pain, so let me go ahead and smoke again. And that's exactly what happens. A lot of people are kind of like pussies in a sense. They're kind of like bitches in a sense, like pussies, because they can't really feel their emotions. They can't really process their emotions, because why? They're scared to, thus them being bitches, or thus them being pussies. That is exactly what is going on here. Now, why did it take me 5 years to quit smoking weed? It's because I felt that I needed it. I had some sort of dependence on weed. I had some sort of psychological attachment to it because I felt that I needed to smoke weed to kind of like escape the things that I was feeling. There's one point in my life where I had no clue what the hell I wanted to do. I tried starting up businesses, all that sort of stuff, but nothing was working. I was making like no money at all. I was making like $100 to $200 a week because I'm a barber. I wasn't getting clients like that. And when I actually quit smoking weed, I ended up skyrocketing my finances, skyrocketing my physique. Everything in my life ended up skyrocketing after I cut out weed, essentially. Now, like what I was saying before, you have this subconscious distortion. Frank doesn't. Frank has his shit together. Frank does not believe that he needs to rely on weed to numb his emotions, because Frank has good emotional intelligence. Because that's really what's going on here. Like a lot of people, there's a certain archetype of person who gets addicted to weed in the first place. The certain archetype of people who gets addicted to weed are people who usually kind of like grew up in not the best household, I guess you could say. They didn't really like grow up expressing themselves that much, or they didn't really grow up, I guess you could say, having good emotional intelligence, or healthily dealing with their emotions in specific ways, if you know what I'm saying. And that's why stoners become such good friends, because they are kind of alike, you know, like people who usually get addicted to weed, they're a certain archetype of person. So obviously, if someone who's a stoner, you're naturally going to connect with other people who are stoners, because like what I said, you are the same type of person. So yeah, that's why a lot of these stoners are really good friends, because they kind of connect on a deeper level, I guess you would say, even though they don't really have anything in common. Usually the only thing that they have in common is fucking weed. But yeah, so Frank, he has the subconscious and mental framework of someone who is not addicted to weed, of someone who has full control over their usage. So what if you're to shift your mental framework into one of Frank's? And that's what I call something called cognitive reassociation, something that I kind of came up with. And a lot of people ask me like, yo, where the hell did that term come from? I'm not gonna lie. I came up with that myself. And the reason why I came up with that myself, because I could have called it anything else, but I think that sounds cool. It sounds pretty badass. I'm not gonna lie. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, what if you were to shift your mental framework into one of Frank's? What if you were to shift your mental framework into someone who does not need weed, someone who does not identify with a stoner? It's that simple. And that's how, exactly how, I spent 5 years trying to do this. And once I realized all this, once I actually started doing work on myself, once I actually started looking inwards, as corny as that sounds, that's when I was actually able to let go of weed. And it did not take willpower. I did not need to use willpower to quit smoking weed. No, I didn't have to use willpower at all. And the reason why I didn't have to use willpower at all is because once you shift your mental framework, you just feel as if you don't need to smoke anymore. You're like, oh, yeah, you know, I don't feel like smoking. I just don't feel like smoking. You essentially outgrow weed. Exactly how you outgrew playing Fortnite. Exactly how you outgrew playing Minecraft. Exactly how you outgrew watching The Lion King or different movies, something that you've outgrown. There are certain habits and certain things that you used to do as a kid that you have now outgrown. And weed, for me, is one of those things. You don't need willpower to stop yourself from playing Fortnite. No. You don't need willpower to stop yourself from playing Minecraft. No. You just simply don't want to do it. You just simply don't feel like doing it. You just simply are just like, oh, yeah, I feel like I don't need it. That's the same exact thing for me and other people who have full control over their usage. They're not using willpower. They don't need to freaking tie themselves to a chair to stop themselves from freaking hitting up their plug. No, they don't need to lock themselves in a room and freaking start scratching their neck every time someone offers them a blunt, because no, they're just like, yeah, no, I don't feel like it. Because that's essentially what a person not like Frank who tries to use willpower to quit smoking weed does. They're like, oh fuck, I want to smoke so bad right now, but I can't. Oh no, oh no, no. That's exactly what is going on. But if you stop using willpower, because that is not going to get you anywhere, if you stop using willpower and actually shift your mental framework into someone who doesn't need weed in the first place, then things become so much easier. And it took me 5 years to understand this. It took me 5 years to get to the point where I feel as if I don't need to smoke weed at all. And when I say this, like, a lot of people can't really, this doesn't compute in a lot of people's head, because I was like you before, trust me. I used to think like, what the fuck? What do you mean you don't want to smoke? Like, it made no sense to me at all how someone could pass up a blunt. It made no sense at all. So that's what I was saying. Willpower does not work. And the reason why willpower does not work is because essentially your willpower drains. Eventually, your willpower gets to the point where it is depleted. So that's why everyone, every single person, I know I keep saying this because this is very, very fucking true. Every single person who tries to quit smoking weed, they end up smoking again. 100% of people do this. Think about it. Every single person knows someone who said, yeah, I'm going to quit smoking weed. A couple weeks later, oh yeah, it's whatever. I'll quit when my ounce is done. Bro, every single fucking person who smokes weed has done that before. Every single stoner knows someone who has done that before. Trust me. That's why willpower to quit never works. This is why quitting, I do not advocate quitting. I don't advocate quitting because you could quit for a year. You could quit for 2 years. But once you end up smoking again, you're going to reawaken your weed addiction. You might as well solve it from the root of the problem. You might as well get to the root of the issue and solve it from there, because once you pull out the root cannot grow back again. No, the plant cannot grow back again. The tree cannot grow back again if you cut out the root. So that's essentially what we're doing here. Just to kind of summarize what we talked about here, what you need to do is you need to shift your mental framework into one where you feel as if you don't need to smoke, you need to shift your mental framework into one where you feel as if you don't need weed anymore. And you actually need to get to the point where you feel as if you don't need weed anymore, which is actually quite simple, because what you're essentially doing is you are doing the inner work. You need to identify what you are trying to escape from. You need to identify different reasons on why you're smoking in the first place. You need to identify the thing that you're hiding from and actually deal with it. If you are someone who's trying to escape your reality right now, you need to fucking man up and actually step up and then fix and solve those problems. If you don't know what you want to do with your life, you need to man up and figure it out. You need to stop smoking the weed and then figure it out. And once you actually do figure it out and start getting on your grind, getting on your purpose, you are naturally gonna outgrow weed, because that's literally what happens. You outgrow weed. So, like what I said before, you need to get to the point where you are dealing with just dealing with your shit. You know what I'm saying? Look inward, start dealing with your shit. Look into different trauma release and that sort of stuff. And yes, I'm telling you, it is very easy to quit weed once you get to that point. But yeah, like what I said, a community where I teach people how to quit smoking weed and bring them through the whole program of doing all of this stuff and getting to the point where they don't have to use willpower. They could just simply shift their mental framework into one where they do not need weed anymore. Right now, the group is free. It is literally free right now for people, and it is worth a lot of money because people literally spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars learning how to quit smoking weed. But right now, it is free for the first 10 members. So join that now before it gets past 10 members, because once it gets past 10 members, that's when I'm going to start charging people. I just made the community, so yeah, it's pretty new. All right, guys.